Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Arcade, Chapter 1.
Look out, Jake! Nog screamed. You're targeted! She's locked on!
Jake did not answer the frantic voice in his helmet headset. He throttled up and urged the atmospheric fighter into a steep ascent. If this maneuver didn't work, he was dead.
Fire, Tannerlin, fire!
Rotor, a reptilian Sele boy, shouted encouragement to the Bajoran girl.
I'm going to get you this time, Jake Sisko,
Lynn snarled. Jake's onboard computer sounded an alarm as a heat-seeking missile streaked from Lynn's armament pod. Jake kept his gaze on the control panel as he executed a reverse loop, leveled off, and rocketed under the enemy plane. Lynn did not react in time. Her own missile streaked into her starboard engine, and the Bajoran's fighter exploded in a burst of colored light and thunder.
Yes!
Nog's victory cry rang in Jake's ears.
Your response time was too slow, Tannerlin, Rotor hissed. A fighter pilot must be coiled to strike.
Stow it, Snake Eyes, Lynn snapped. Jake ignored them. Breathless and exhilarated, he cruised blue skies at supersonic speeds, then gasped in surprise as a cockpit vanished and the world suddenly went black. Not funny, Nog. Jake slipped his hands out of the flexible gloves and ripped off his helmet. He turned to blast Nog for shutting down the virtual reality game before his time was up. He found himself staring at the slightly lopsided but very stern face of the Deep Space Nine security chief.
Odo! Classes start in 5 minutes, Mr. Sisko, Odo said dryly. The IQ aptitudes are scheduled for today, are they not?
Yeah. Jake's high spirits fell.
Then I suggest you get moving. You too, Tannerlin.
Right. Jake picked up his data pad, then noticed that Nog and Rotor had conveniently disappeared. He frowned, wondering why. Odo couldn't force him to go to school. Nog's father, Rom, didn't want him to go at all, so Nog only went when he felt like it. Rotor, who looked like a giant cobra with 2 stubby legs, was just visiting Deep Space Nine. His father was a captain of a Sele merchant ship that had put into the station for repairs. But being Commander Benjamin Sisko's son, Jake not only had to attend, he was expected to do well.
What seems to be the problem here?
Bocat, the Ferengi proprietor of the game's bazaar, sauntered down the center aisle, addressing his question to Odo. Tannerlin stomped out the door, but Jake hung back. The constable was not happy about having another Ferengi business on the promenade, and Bocat could not afford to antagonize him. The new arcade had opened several days before and offered a variety of games not available at Galactic Adventures, which featured holographic simulations. Bocat's inventory included replicas of historical games Jake found much more challenging. Primitive virtual reality, 20th century pinball, flat-screen action adventures, and target ball required physical dexterity and sharp reflexes as well as quick thinking. The carnival atmosphere of clashing sounds and flashing lights made the game's bazaar the perfect place to get away from everyday problems.
No problem, yet, Odo said curtly. But if I'm forced to play truant officer very often, you'll have a big problem. Me.
Bocat shrugged.
Policing the clientele is not my responsibility. Galactic Adventures does not allow children to play before or during school hours.
Odo scowled and leaned toward the Ferengi.
You might want to consider a similar policy. Sounds like bad business to me.
Bocat shook his head, then met Odo's stare.
Every credit counts. There won't be any credits if you lose your license.
Odo turned, saw Jake, and stormed forward.
School! Now!
As Jake bolted for the door, he glanced back. Nog and Rotor were huddled under an electronic dartboard, pointing at him and laughing. Bocat was staring at him too, but there was no hint of humor in the Ferengi's expression. Spooked by Bocat's intense interest, Jake raced out after Tannerlin. Just before they reached the classroom, Jake grabbed Lynn's sleeve and brought her to a halt. Lynn, wait a minute. The Bajoran girl whirled on him angrily. What is it? Are you mad at me for winning dogfight? Jake asked. Tina Lynn reminded him of the fiery Major Kira Nerys, his father's second in command. Both Bajorans were always ready for a fight. You always win that, Jake, but I can beat you on Dragon Keep. I scored over 56,000 points yesterday. Set the all-time record and got a free game, too. Lynn's attitude bothered Jake. A little competitive spirit added spice to the contest, but she had become so serious about beating him, playing wasn't as much fun anymore. You won't get a chance to try if Odo closes the Games Bazaar. Why would he do that? Lynn asked, suddenly worried. Bocat wasn't exactly cooperative. Engaging in shady business schemes didn't bother the Ferengi, as long as they didn't get caught. Odo always caught Nog's Uncle Quark, but it was a constant battle of wits that tried the shapeshifter's patience. Yeah, so he'll use any excuse to shut Bocat down. No Ferengi will deliberately turn away paying customers, so we have to do it for him. Jake realized Lynn didn't understand and explained, I'm not going in there before school anymore. Lynn fixed him with a determined green-eyed gaze. There's no law against playing before school, as long as we're not late. Do what you want, Jake, but I need all the practice I can get. They're just games, Lynn. Lynn waved him off and darted through the door. Jake sighed. They each excelled at one type of game or another, and all four were evenly matched on the old flat-screen action adventures. They had won several free games recently. Curiously, Bocat had not been upset about losing the additional credits. He had seemed pleased, which didn't make sense. Jake realized uneasily. No self-respecting Ferengi liked losing money. The bell sounded, and Jake forgot about the Games Bazaar as he trudged to his seat. He had more serious problems. His teacher, Keiko O'Brien, had arranged a conference with his father that afternoon. His Earth history term paper was overdue, and the IQ aptitude test would probably show he had the intelligence of an Andorian rock slug and wasn't suited for anything more exciting than hauling space trash.
Chapter 2.
Jake was the last student to take the IQ aptitude test. However, the evaluation procedure was actually fun, more like a game than a test. Once he started, he didn't mind having to stay after everyone else had been dismissed. A snug-fitting black helmet covered his eyes and ears, so no external sight or sound could distract him. There was a prickly sensation on his scalp where the electrodes made contact, but it was easily ignored. He didn't have to write anything down or think about his answers. Images ranging from written questions to visual situational problems flashed on the screen covering his eyes, and the device registered his responses. Observers could watch on. Observers could watch on an auxiliary screen connected to the helmet. Jake did not know how long the test had been running. He just dealt with each new problem as it was presented. He stood in a corridor before an open inner airlock hatch. Lord, this is hard to read. He heard the hiss a second before the outer hatch blew out and mentally slammed his hand on the seal control. The inner door closed before sudden decompression blew him into space. Who invented duotronic computer technology? When? Dr. Richard Daystrom, 2243. Easy, Jake thought. How are you feeling? Great. Instantly, the view shifted to show perfectly spaced, crisscrossing lines in space. Identify. Tholian Web. And Jake was standing in a cargo bay with red alert klaxons blaring. The comm panel showed that the inertial dampeners and all backup systems would fail. The ship could not brake. Result? Squashed against the bulkhead by the ship's forward velocity. It was not a funny situation, but the mental picture of being shot across a hold and flattened against the wall made Jake smile. 47.90 is the atomic weight of titanium. The screen darkened, and the words "test over" blinked. Jake exhaled, relieved and exhausted, yet feeling oddly thrilled too. Excellent, Jake. Keiko removed the helmet and set it aside. You scored an 857. Is that good? Jake squinted as his eyes adjusted to standard station light.
Very good,
said a familiar deep voice. Dad! Jake gasped. His father had watched the whole test. Benjamin Sisko watched Jake now.
In fact, this test proves something we've suspected all along, Jake. You're extremely bright, and you're not working up to your potential or abilities.
Jake didn't say anything. He couldn't argue results arrived at through Federation technology. He had been betrayed by his own brain, and knowing he was much smarter than an Andorian rock slug, it didn't help. Now his father would expect even more of him. I wouldn't worry too much, Commander Sisko, Keiko said. Jake just needs time to find his own niche. When he discovers a subject that really interests him, he'll apply himself.
Perhaps, but I don't want him to lose too much ground while we're waiting. If he spent half as much time working as he does playing arcade games, that overdue term paper might be finished.
Sisko turned back to Jake.
Don't you agree?
Yeah, Jake sighed. He knew what was coming next.
Well, since you can't seem to organize your time and set your priorities properly, I will. No more game playing until that paper is finished, correctly, and turned in.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Commander Sisko paused to grip Jake's shoulder on his way out the door.
I'll see you at dinner.
Keiko's words of praise fell on deaf ears as Jake left the school. Despondent, he shuffled toward the nearest crossover bridge connecting the promenade to the habitat ring. He was in no hurry to get home and decided to walk instead of riding the turbolift. At least he wouldn't have to explain being grounded to his friends until tomorrow. They were all at the Games Bazaar having fun while he was stuck writing a paper on a bunch of crazy knights who had fought a stupid religious war on Earth over 1,000 years ago. Boring. Psst. Jake stopped dead halfway through the crossover. No one was in sight, but he suddenly felt very alone and vulnerable. Anyone could be lurking in the empty passageway. The station teemed with rowdy merchant crewmen, aliens with mysterious codes of conduct, Klingons and Cardassians and Bajoran political activists. Deep Space Nine could be a dangerous place for the unwary. Psst! Who's there? Jake backed up a step. A Ferengi hand beckoned him from the open hatch at the end of the corridor.
Jake, over here. It's me, Bocat.
Annoyed, Jake walked forward. What is it, Bocat? Ferengi grinned and rubbed his hands together.
I've got a proposition for you, Jake. A once-in-a-lifetime offer.
Uh-huh. Like what? Jake waited, intrigued and suspicious.
A chance to try the ultimate game. The Zodran Crystal Quest. Not a game for the average player, mind you. Oh, no.
Bocat lowered his voice.
A game only the best dare attempt.
Why me? Curiosity overcame Jake's reservations.
Your skill is exceptional. I simply must give you an opportunity to try the impossible.
Sorry, Bocat, I can't.
But it's free!
The Ferengi's eyes widened in near panic. Free? Jake started, suddenly nervous. How come? Bocat blinked, his mind racing.
As a reward, my boy, in keeping with the 51st rule of acquisition.
Which is?
Reward anyone who adds to your profits, they will continue to do so.
Bocat smiled and draped his arm over Jake's shoulders.
Do you have any idea how many adults are coming into the Games Bazaar to try and top your scores?
Jake shrugged. No.
A lot. They can't transfer their credits fast enough, so I must repay you. It's only right.
Jake scowled, remembering the hard look Bocat had given him that morning. There was no right or wrong in Ferengi culture, only profit and loss, and they were always looking for a sucker. Look, I appreciate the offer, but I can't right now. I've really got to go. Jake tried to edge past the Ferengi, but Bocat's arm whipped out to block his way.
Yes, of course.
Bocat's calculating frown sent a shiver up Jake's spine.
It's an open invitation, any time. However,
Bocat leaned forward, pressing Jake against the bulkhead.
This is our secret. No one else must know. Understand?
Jake looked into narrowed Ferengi eyes and nodded quickly. No, I won't say anything. Promise.
Such an intelligent young person. For a human. I can't have people thinking I'm an easy touch. It would ruin my reputation.
Bocat turned to leave and looked back with a sly grin. No one has ever won the Zodran Crystal Quest, Jake. Alone again, Jake sagged with relief. The thought of playing and beating a game no one else had won was an irresistible challenge, except for Bocat. Somehow the Ferengi would profit if Jake played the Zodran Crystal Quest and won. On the other hand, he had nothing to lose by trying, except game privileges for the rest of his life if he didn't get the history paper handed in soon. Jake hurried home with a new sense of purpose. Most of his research was done. All he had to do was organize his notes and write the paper. Once the assignment was finished, his father would let him play again, and Bocat had said he could try the impossible game anytime. Jake raced through the turbolift doors. He had overslept after staying up late, working on the paper, and he still wasn't done. Bocat's game, the Zodran Crystal Quest, was to blame. He couldn't help but wonder why it was so difficult. He'd probably never find out. Bocat could not be trusted, and the Crusades report would take another 2 days to complete, longer if he couldn't keep his mind on the project. A maintenance access hatch by the Promenade airlock had been left open. Jake skidded to a halt. Deep Space Nine had been in ruins when Bajor and Starfleet had taken possession after the Cardassians evacuated. Miles O'Brien, Keiko's husband and chief of operations, had worked hard to get all systems functioning up to Federation standards. Leaving a hatch ajar was not serious negligence, but O'Brien was a stickler for such details. Jake decided to close it and save someone from a loud O'Brien lecture. As he reached to hit the control panel, Jake inhaled sharply. Tina Lin was lying unconscious inside the tube with severe burns on her face and arms.